What did Victoria Nuland admit to over the weekend?
Victoria Nuland admitted to exactly what every guest on this show has been saying for a long time now, which is that the U.S. blocked a peace deal that was reached in April 2022, the early weeks of Russia's invasion, that could have ended that war on totally reasonable grounds and saved hundreds of thousands of lives and how many billions of dollars and all the other damage and consequences of this war. That deal has been discussed on this show at length. The basic premise was Russia would withdraw to its pre-invasion lines. Zelensky and Putin would meet to flesh out an agreement on the future of Donbass and Crimea. And most importantly, Ukraine would declare neutrality, which is not, contrary to how it's portrayed now, a radical demand. That's the same principle that Ukraine had enshrined in its founding state constitution. That was the deal. We all know what happened. The US and UK stood in the way. And Nuland newly confirmed that by saying that very late in the process, the U.S. had concerns that, in her words, the agreement would leave Ukraine neutered. And what did she mean by that? She explained that there would be limits on what kinds of weapon systems Ukraine could have. So for the sake of Ukraine not being neutered, Nuland and her colleagues ordered Ukraine to basically destroy itself, because that's what's happened ever since. Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives because the U.S. could not accept that their proxy state, which they created in 2014 by backing a coup, would be limited in its offensive weapon system pointed at Russia. And since they see Ukraine not as a country worth having for its own benefit and for the benefit of its own people, but for being used as a bulwark against Russia so that they can weaken Russia, they refuse to let Ukraine agree to this peace deal, because Ukraine asked the U.S. for security guarantees to underpin that deal. And Nuland and her colleagues rejected that. So that was the reason she gave. Now, what's really important about this, obviously, her admitting this is not news to an audience of this show or of the Gray Zone, where I work with Max Blumenthal and Anya Parampil, because we've talked about this a long time. What's new, though, is actually, for the first time, I believe, she's given the real reason why the U.S. opposed this deal. So previously, they've acknowledged that, yes, they opposed the deal, but they've given different reasons. The first reason we got, if you remember this, was the discovery of the alleged Russian atrocities in Bucha. That after those atrocities were discovered, there's no way Ukraine could make peace with this murderous state, so they had to walk away. Right. Now, there's reasons to doubt that, because even Zelensky himself at the time said, and again, I'm putting aside what actually happened in Bucha, because I don't know, I wasn't there, and to me, it's not the real question. Zelensky said, the way to prevent more atrocities in Bucha is to end the war, which is true. If you want to end the war, if you don't want to have more atrocities, reach a peace deal. So this excuse that Ukraine walked away because of Bucha, it never held water to begin with. Then we got a different excuse more recently from the New York Times, which is that Russia tried to insert a last-minute clause that would have essentially allowed it to invade Ukraine at will. As we've discussed previously on the show, and I've written about, that excuse also doesn't hold water, because the whole premise of the treaty was that Russia would agree not to invade Ukraine. And so therefore, this claim that they were trying to insert some sneaky clause to let them invade Ukraine was just ridiculous. Now we get, I think, from Nuland an honest answer, which is that this would have prevented Ukraine from hosting advanced U.S. weapon systems. And because, in the eyes of U.S. neocons, that cannot be allowed, this war had to continue, and so many more people had to die.
And hence your public reference to her as a war criminal.
Well, yeah, and this extends to her record, not just in Ukraine, but across the spectrum. She used to be a top advisor to Dick Cheney. She has the distinction of being one of the few people to advise both Dick Cheney and Hillary Clinton. She worked first for Cheney, then went on to be an aide to Hillary Clinton at the State Department, which underscores how bipartisan this neocon consensus is and what a disaster it's been for everybody, except for the members of that club.